Hello and welcome. Many of you know me. I'm Catherine Cassidy, founder and CEO of Boutique Box, and I am so excited to welcome one of our Boutique Box members, Rani Pooran, into our very first intelligent style profile session. For those of you who don't know Boutique Box, we help busy professional women find clothes they love that fit. That's like the essence of what we do, but really there's so much more to it. It is my honor to support the women that we get to support with their style evolution, and they are just incredible women. With this journey of Boutique Box, we have worked with a number of women over the course of a few years. So we've really started to see an evolution and their intelligent style fully come together. And so over the course of the next year, because we keep growing, but I will start featuring these women every month so that you get to know them, you get to learn more about their work, and for you to see that style truly is for every woman and every body. So without further ado, welcome Rani. Thank you so much for joining us this bright new 2025 Friday.
Glad to be here, Catherine.
So let's just dive right in for the sake of your time and those that are listening in. Rani, I would love if you would share a little bit about how you think your style has evolved as your career has progressed.
I would say my style today, and as a result of working very closely with Boutique Box and yourself over the past couple of years, has become more confident and inspired. And that is how I see my career journey as well. And not surprisingly, the two have grown together. So if I think about my career over the past, I think I've been working now for close to 20 years or so. I've had many turning points. One was when I went from being an individual contributor to people manager for the first time 10 years ago or so. Another one was moving from a risk management role into the area that I'm in today, which is diversity, equity, and inclusion. And then a third big change that I made was back in 2021. I left the private sector, banking in particular, where I'd grown up, to move to the international public sector to build a diversity, equity, and inclusion program. And that took me from Canada, Toronto specifically, to Washington, D.C., where I now spend most of my time in this role. And each time I made a change, it came with expanded responsibilities, different responsibilities. And it also meant that I had to level up my style, if you like, and think about how I would project authority in a way that reflected the context that I was in. How I showed up would determine in large part how I'm able to connect with the people I work with, whether those were my direct reports, my boss, stakeholders. And as I changed my style, and most recently with Boutique Box when I moved to DC, it's definitely left me feeling more confident and inspired. And now I have clothes that I absolutely love. I do a lot of speaking engagements, either online or in person, in my current role. And I can put on like that short little black jacket that was one of the first pieces I got from Boutique Box, which I love. It makes me feel really confident. Or a necklace that I recently bought on a trip to Chile, or that green dress. So clothes really set the tone for me for how I show up and allow me to connect with my audience and deliver my message with impact.
Yes, I think that's such a powerful reflection on the evolution, too, of how you think about your style as well as just the evolution in your career and the introspection that you took upon yourself as you thought about how you wanted to approach the next level for your career. And how you showed up holistically. When you joined the Boutique Box membership, you had communicated your budget for the season and your goals for like you already had a sense of what you wanted. I know, we worked a little bit to create that action plan together, but you really prioritized it for yourself, which I absolutely love. That's like a key tenet to intelligent style is shopping with intention and also, quality over quantity. Wardrobe budget, though, tends to be an afterthought for a lot of women. And so either it happens and or so either you end up overspending because you don't have a budget. And then there's a whole lot of layers to that, or you don't spend it all. And there's the guilt and the shame of that because you haven't prioritized this element of how you show up. So how did you come to set a budget for yourself and have that mindset?
Yeah, great question. So I grew up in a family where fiscal responsibility is a very strong value. So my dad, for instance, is the one who instilled that value in my sister and myself. But he has like no interest in fashion. Only recently have we been able to get him to evolve, his look now that he's retired. My mom has an interest in style, and she's often giving me tips saying like, this would look good on you, that doesn't look good on you. So for me, the two come together really naturally. If style is important, just like food and travel, then I'm going to put money behind it. And I can relate to overspending. Prior to working with Boutique Box, I would say I was overspending, even though I historically have kept a very tightly edited wardrobe, I would say, compared to others that I know, but wasn't very happy with all of my clothes. Whereas now I'd say I'm happy with like 99% of what's in my wardrobe. So for me, putting a budget, it's intentional. It makes me very happy. I know I've got this money set aside, and I calculate that budget on a monthly basis too. I'm just getting ready to share with you next week what my budget will be for this year, and I know what that means for my monthly spend. So I really break it down. And then when I see that monthly spend, actually, it's not as much as I think. Like, it looks like a big amount if I think, okay, I'm spending X amount of money for the year. But when you break it down monthly, and then you can even break it down bi-weekly to see what comes out of your paycheck, it's actually a really great approach.
Absolutely. And I think you touched on the prioritization of what you value and investing in yourself, which I think is for a lot of women a learning curve, which is another conversation we can have another time, since most of us, like, women have really only been earning for themselves since the 70s. So I think a lot of us don't recognize how much we're really unlearning to relearn how we spend money for ourselves, because we do have that autonomy now in a different way. We alluded to this, you already touched on this, I should say, a little bit earlier, about how we've talked about our shared mindset with Intelligent Style and how that resonated with you even before you started working with Boutique Box, as, for style being a tool as how you show up as a leader. And then, so you also know, I think we, again, share this about style as a way to consider your presence that's not about fitting in, but being able to be yourself and respect the audience, which I think is where there's a bit of a disconnect between the executive presence way of talking about style or at least the historical way, or all the stuff that's still stuck in the shoulds of style, especially for women. With your work leading DEI, how do you think organizations should be thinking differently about how they speak about presence to be more inclusive? And what would you hope would shift with that conversation?
Yeah, what do I hope would shift? Let me start by talking about executive presence and some learning that I received from you as I was preparing for that workshop. So, as you know, I'm co-facilitating a workshop on executive presence in January. And one of the elements we're going to talk about is style. How style can enable you, as you say, to be inclusive, be true to yourself, and have impact. And you prepared a video for me for that session and introduced this concepts of embodied and enclothed cognition, which, simply put, in my understanding, is what you wear influences how you feel and how you behave. And so the workplace has evolved a lot in terms of dress, style, being embracing of different identities. That's fantastic. And I believe that will continue to happen. And so let's assume women step into this space of owning their style and feeling really good based on what they're wearing that day, which, I certainly am a huge proponent of. Then what I would like to see shift, to come back to your original question, is using questions to draw people in. So presence is also about, and it's this inclusion piece, is also about making people feel validated, making them feel seen, giving them an opportunity to be heard. And so how powerful can it be? We're talking about women here. If you have a woman that really owns her style and then also is able to command the room because she's able to ask really great questions, right? That draw people out and into the conversation who may not feel like they necessarily have a place otherwise. So that's what I'd like to see.
Yes, because one thing that I've seen is there's this, it's either you really enjoy it or you feel like it's not for you at all. And you don't know where to start. And something I'll add to what you're sharing for those that are listening is, like, style is learned. Like everything in life, style is learned. With the Boutique Box membership, we have you take what I call your Intelligent Style Quotient Assessment, ISQ. ISQ is like EQ. It can be learned and improved. And I think as women, there's this like societal should of we should just know what works for our body. We should just know how to dress. But so much has changed within the fashion industry, within our working experience, within, what we're, how we are actually emboldened and empowered in the world now cannot be any shoulds anymore. And there's no, this is how you do it, let alone our bodies are so diverse. And so many of the trends in the past have been about like really fitting into one certain type of body. And there's always been women left out of each of these trends. So I think that I should know, no, it is learned. And just to underscore a little bit, the embodied cognition is learning through experience. So learning by just simply starting and getting into your closet and playing. You mentioned buying things when you're traveling. Like, what are you drawn to? Like, we actually all do have our style innately within us. But to your point, Rani, it's about asking the questions to draw it out for you to understand what the essence of it is. And that inner inquiry is so essential to the outer representation of your style. And that is what is intelligent style that creates that connection. So again, this is just why I love our members so much. I love I love getting to know each of you so well and being able to support you because you're showing up for yourself too when you opt into the membership. So one thing that I've noticed is that there's often a transition event that inspires a woman to take the leap and join the membership, which I shouldn't even say take the leap. It's not a huge leap, but it is, it's a decision. So what made you say yes to joining the Boutique Box membership?
Yeah, so I have a story I want to share about this. So I moved to DC in May of 2022. And that was, okay, it seems like a long time away now, but that was sort of the tail end of the pandemic, right? Like many of us, most of us, my wardrobe needed to change. I wasn't happy with a lot of my clothes. Even though I was still getting dressed up for work every day when I was on video, but then, I'd moved to DC and more people were coming to the office. And so, I was exploring the district, which is where I live, like right in the district. And it was really frustrating with my shopping options. And then started complaining at work. And I moved in May and it got really, really hot very, very quickly. And also like with thunder shower for an hour and a half, several times a day. And so I really was not equipped with my wardrobe coming from Canada where you have, colder winters, hot summers, but not as humid as DC, to DC where you have milder winters, it's far rainier, and was complaining at work a lot. And one of my team members mentioned Boutique Box to me and told me I should reach out to you. And she shared how she'd worked with you. And I was like, oh, this sounds excellent. This sounds like exactly what I needed. So part of it was necessity, but also a market opportunity. Like I really could not find what I wanted in DC, and I don't want to shop in big box stores at Tyson's. I don't like what they have to offer, the big box stores, and I also don't like the shopping experience of going in to a mall, actually. I find it very draining and overstimulating. And to me, the value proposition was really clear. I love the designers that Boutique Box has. I love the clothes. I like the way you explained to me the principles of how to dress, and not just making suggestions for me for what I needed in my wardrobe, but also showing me how I could recombine what I have to make outfits I hadn't thought about. So it was a no-brainer.
Thank you for sharing that. I love that. And I honestly, Boutique Box comes from this entire evolution of the business as it has been over since 2008 for me with this problem that we're working to solve is same. I find the shopping experience draining, and I'm somebody who has worked in the fashion industry and has always appreciated clothes for the power of style, not so much for the fitting in component of trends. Never have I been trendy. I'll share a quick anecdote of getting feedback from one of my fashion industry bosses that I was not trendy enough, and that somehow was going to impact my performance. Fortunately, I had the wherewithal to know that that was not, feedback that I should be worried about. It maybe was impacting my promotion opportunity there, but it just was an indicator of where I was, not necessarily being the right fit. But so just an interesting component. I was like, but Yet here I am able to identify the best sellers that we have every month. So there's just this disconnect. Like if for anyone listening, if you feel that like you're not alone, like there's a lot of reasons why that is your experience. And for those who enjoy shopping and don't find that draining, that's incredible. Like go out there and play and I would encourage you to still be discerning with what you add to your wardrobe. But that just highlights how we all are different and there's different opportunities for support for everyone. You did highlight this already, but I do want to just underscore this of, if you have, again, had any, or I'm sorry, there's two parts to this question I actually want you to answer for those that are listening. If you've had any mindset shifts around, like very specific mindset shifts around style since joining, you've shared a little bit throughout your anecdotes, but just to sort of like bullet point. And then would you say your style has then shifted since being a Boutique Box member?
So the mindset shift around style has definitely been around what I mentioned earlier, which is being more inspired and more confident in what I wear and how I show up. I still buy clothes for myself, which, I share with you from time to time, like this jumpsuit that I bought recently, right? And say like, I need a top for inside of it, or, you'll make a suggestion. I mostly do that when I travel. We buy stuff in the US now in stores, unless it's something like I absolutely need, like today or tomorrow. So it's definitely in the more inspired and confidence realm. And what I mean by that is when you explain the principles of how to build a wardrobe. So this idea of like capsuling clothes and putting pieces together in different ways, being very intentional about how I build my wardrobe one piece at a time. While I was keeping a tightly edited wardrobe before, working with you helped me really take that to the next level and really think about how I could expand feeling inspired and confident. And as the same answer for how my mindset has shifted, I'm perhaps also more thoughtful about where I put my money. And what I mean by that is, so of course, I've always supported, for the most part, sustainable fashion where I can. It's impossible to do 100%. But now I'm even more careful about that. And you have many women-owned companies in your portfolio, which I really like. And so I think I have, from working with you and Boutique Box, thinking about intelligent style, I have that more top of mind now when I'm going to spend.
Yeah, I think the number one thing that you can do to be more sustainable with your style is to wear what you have. Mm-hmm. Because inherently the fashion industry is just not sustainable. And it's really hard to do sustainable fabrics that actually work for the workplace still. So focusing on things that mm-hmm. can last for years in your wardrobe, which all of our brands are small batch production, intentionally designed. They fit better because of how they've gone through the process with their pattern making as they've designed each piece, which impacts the price a bit, but they're direct to consumer. So if you had to see these in a department store, they'd be, much more than they are when you buy them directly. And all of our brands, it's actually 100% of our brands are female founders and incredibly diverse in, the styles as well as who the founders are, because that's who women are. Our styles are diverse, our needs are diverse, we are diverse. So yeah, I love that's one of the key things that you appreciate, because that's been very intentional in building this as well. What has been one of the, maybe there's more than one, but what's been the biggest benefit since joining Boutique Box as a member to you?
Yeah, the biggest benefit of joining, well, there are a couple. First, there is definitely cost savings and stress relief. So I talked about this earlier, setting my budget, and that I spend less now than I did before to acquire new items for my wardrobe. So who wouldn't want that? That's great. The stress of having to find high quality items, like that's a weight that's been lifted off my shoulders, because I know there's a go-to place and I can tell you I need X, Y, and Z. I'm very organized, so I'll often tell you in advance, so I don't have, the pressure of time. Like when we were looking for that wedding dress last year for my friend's wedding, I think we had at least a few months. So those are two of the biggest benefits to me. It's like, save me time, save me money, taken stress out of my life, because I don't have an experience in DC where I can enjoy in-person shopping or just, wander down the street and see a great clothes store that piques my interest. And I would also add It's learning about fashion. Like I've learned so much about the industry in the US, about the designers that you work with. Like I met Bettina. The whole experience, it's not just about purchasing clothes. It is, I think, a full immersive experience in fashion. My other complaint is like being a petite woman. And I've complained to you, ad nauseum about that, I'm sure. But that's another benefit. Like I can get clothes that fit me. I mean, okay, sometimes I have to make alterations, but I can get clothes that fit me. And I know that there's someone that understands the needs of petite women. And I don't always have to go to like Ann Taylor and Banana Republic, whose clothes I don't like very much anymore. But yeah, so many benefits for me from joining Boutique Box.
Yeah, I love that. I mean, the chance to gather our members in cities where we have a little bit of a concentration and introduce the designers in person is absolutely one of my favorite things, because I also love you getting to meet each other because everybody is so amazing. So, and I think that's a key element to, as we move forward, leading change,
Mm-hmm.
the change that we want to see, which leads me into sort of the final takeaway, because I think, it's been really fun to see in your role as a leader in DEI, with the organization that you work with being a unique opportunity to lead DEI, I think too, because of how diverse that organization is inherently. And you've shared a little bit about what you've learned. But if you wanted to close out with how those two, what you've learned through the fashion industry and your DEI leadership experience, like the biggest takeaway that you would want to leave
Yeah.
listeners, emboldened women with as we close out.
Yeah, I'd love to. I spend a lot of my time working on issues of gender equality. And at IFC, I mean, we're operating in emerging markets. We're headquartered, for those of our listeners that may not know, in DC, but actually our clients are in emerging markets. And when you think about the garment industry or the fashion industry and the supply chain that powers that, that is global. And there is obviously a concentration in Southeast Asia, the Middle East, Latin America, but we're talking about a global industry. And I just want to share some data points that relate to what I want empowered women to think about, because we all wear clothes, right? Whether we think it's important or not, we wear them. And when we get up in the morning, we do think about, like, what am I going to wear today, right? So why not be intentional about it? So the International Labour Organization in March of 2023 shared that 94 million workers are employed in the garment industry, and nearly 60% of those are women globally. And in some regions in the world, it can be as high as 80% women. So what that means is in some parts of the world, you may have 4 out of 5 people being female that work in the garment industry, right? So when we make our purchases, whether it's through Boutique Box or it's another brand, we have a chance to support women, to support women's lives, to support their livelihoods. And we know that when women are empowered, they make choices that benefit their communities, their families, and the world at large. So my first call to action is to be very intentional about where we spend our money and to think about the connection as women that is having to other women and for other women. And then the other piece is around trying to reduce the waste in the world. So Catherine, you talked about this, that the fashion industry is inherently unsustainable, especially when we think about clothing that we wear to work. Nevertheless, there is this great book I read, recommended to me by Kelly Burton, who looks at issues of sustainability in fashion. So the book is called Fashionopolis, and it's written by a lady called Dana Thomas. And she said Americans throw away twice as many clothes today than they did 20 years ago. So over the past 20 years, that's gone from 7 million to 14 million. I forget whether that's like pounds or tons, but it's a volume measure. Yeah, tons.
It's tons.
Yeah, okay. Yep. And so that is 80 pounds per person per year. So that's a huge amount of waste. So I think we also have an opportunity through services like Boutique Box and Intelligent Style to reduce our waste. And, as I shared earlier, also do it with less money if we're good with our budgeting.
Yeah, I love that. That actually, one thing I will add to that point, so powerfully made, especially with how it's a chance to empower women, and how we know that women, by and large, when they're empowered financially, economically, it doesn't just benefit the individual, it benefits the community. And there's plenty of data that can support that. Now, of course, they're individuals. That's why I say by and large they're not going to do that. But by and large, that is true. With Boutique Box, we actually have added a resale element, not necessarily because of this point of not throwing things away, but being able to, if you've bought something through Boutique Box, you can resell it if your body shifts, or if something within your style shifts, or as somebody was connecting with me recently mentioned, she's highly visible. So she'll get 3 to 5 wears out of it and then want to put it back into the ecosystem. And there's certainly like designer sales like this that you can go to the Real Real. I've known a lot of people that have great success to buy designer via the Real Real. There's just so many different layers to how you can solve this problem for women with different resources. It's just an individual, what is the best for you? But I think a lot of that waste comes from not knowing how to dress your body. So you're buying clothes to try to fit, not having enough time. You need something short term, immediate, satisfaction. The event is coming up and you are buying something and it's like, okay, this works, but you don't love it. So you don't wear it again. So eventually it will potentially be recycled or tossed, maybe tried to give away. Because even donating to a Dress for Success type organization, a lot of those clothes are too worn out for them to actually put into circulation for those women. Donating your clothes is not always actually the solution. It doesn't end up necessarily being worn. It will often, a lot of that gets thrown out. So I think just being aware of that small impact that you can make by simply being more intentional is such a huge point to make, and how that ends up creating what I call a cycle of success. So that upward cycle, because you're being intentional with where you purchase, who you purchase it from. It ends up impacting the designer, that then can impact the community where the clothes are being made. And then that impacts the community. And then that collective impact ends up leading the change that we do want to see to make what is inherently unsustainable more sustainable. And this is why, women will lead the change. Rani, thank you so much for taking some time out of your first Friday of 2025. I know we all are busy women, and I really especially appreciate your willingness to take this time to inspire other women to see how they think about style and how they show up a little bit differently. And please, for those that are watching or listening, feel free to share this interview. I think this is a great interview with everything that Rani highlighted to share with your teams as a really easy way to start helping your teams think differently about style. And this can translate to men just the same, because it's really about thinking about who am I and how do I want to show up, and taking it one step at a time. So with that, I'll leave you all to have a wonderful first Friday of 2025, and cheers to a year of flow and growth.
Bye, Catherine.
Thank you, Rani.